Leave room for the unknown. Otherwise, your story has already written itself and is just going to get worse and darker. But if you leave room for, the unknown possibility, then it can just be better than you ever imagined. And I know that sounds cliche, but it is so true.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
On today's episode of the SHAIR Podcast, we have Cole Chance joining us. She is awesome. I love her story. And the reason why I call the episode Dope Sick is because her bottoms were some of the lowest bottoms that I've had the opportunity to record. Her story is gut-wrenching and at the same time is absolutely inspirational to all of our newcomers. She has overcome adversities that most of us can only have nightmares about. Today, she is a yoga instructor, a Y12SR yoga instructor. She is a Thai massage therapist and a world traveler. She's a badass, and I can't wait to jump into her story. But first, we're going to do a little SHAIR podcast news. So first of all, let's just say that over the course of the holidays, there's been a lot of relapse. That is for sure. But there has also been a lot of accountability. The ones that have relapsed have come back into the Facebook groups, have openly discussed their relapse and their new struggle with getting and staying sober. The important thing is that they're back. And these groups, the Facebook groups, make it very easy in that transitional period between the relapse and the next meeting. Because many times going to a meeting and seeing everyone face to face is difficult. It's tough to face all your friends in there and pick up that white chip and say, I've got 1 day sober, I've got 1 day clean. So the important thing is that they're back. But on top of the relapsers is all the absolute amazing success stories. People were bookending the whole holiday season. They were checking in before they were going into parties. They would check in after they would leave from the parties. And they would post that they made it through the holidays clean and sober. And that is so inspirational for so many of us, especially the newcomers that need to know or that need to see other recovering addicts and alcoholics staying clean and sober during the holidays. It's so vital. It's so important. And speaking of which, I've got to give some shout outs here because I'm blown away. I'm just blown away by the service work that's being done on a daily basis by members of these groups that have under 6 months. There's a few that have over 6 months and even years. But the ones that are in there every single day giving support is Fanina, Dee, Dawn, Penny, Ed, Ashley, Edward, Lewis, Amanda, Terrence, Ronald, Robert, Rachel, Lauda, Dana, Brian, James. It's just been like when I go into these groups and somebody posts that they're having a bad day or they're having a tough time staying sober or they got into a fight with their spouse or they want to celebrate an achievement. It's these people that I just mentioned that are just going in there and making comments and actively participating in the recovery of the others in the groups. And it's so amazing. If you do not think that you have something to share, that you cannot do service, you're absolutely wrong. We're talking about people, some of the people I mentioned had 1 day and were doing service. And again, I want to thank everyone I just mentioned and the ones I didn't mention because there's hundreds, literally hundreds of people that are in these Facebook groups that are doing service, and bravo to you guys. You guys are not only helping others stay clean, you're keeping yourself clean by doing service and helping others. And let's talk about gifts here. These are the gifts that I get from recovery and being of service. I got an email from my good friend Lauda, who's visiting here in Costa Rica. She writes, "Morning, O. Week 1 in Costa Rica, and we're loving it. Spent a couple days rappelling down the waterfalls, whitewater rafting, ziplining, and a week back in the villa above. She sent me a video of the villa that they're staying in. I know it's a long drive from San Jose, but there's lots of room in this gorgeous villa on a mountain, and would love if you and yours would come spend an afternoon at the pool, beach, dinner. We have a lovely guest room for you as well. I am finding my first sober holiday, especially at this time of year, challenging to say the least. 3 months sober, should be 8, but oops, in Mexico in the fall. There don't appear to be any meetings in Samara, but my sobriety squad keeping me clean is your podcast. While the howler monkeys signal good morning, you're in my ears to drown them out. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas, and I would love for you to come visit. Cheers, Lauda. Now, if you guys had seen the video she sent me, this villa is overlooking the ocean. It's spectacular. I mean, it's awesome. And, 12 years ago, there isn't a soul on this planet that would have invited me into their home for 15 minutes. I'm just blown away by the love and support that I feel from the listeners. We know each other because of the podcast. Thank you so much, Lauda. I wish I could have come out there. My wife sent me an email and said, I can go. God bless her. Anyway, these are the absolute gifts of the program. And one more gift that I especially loved getting was from Maureen. And Maureen sent me a recorded message, which goes along like this.
Hey, Omar, I hope you're getting this. I just want to let you know how much I love your podcast. My name's Maureen. I celebrate 1 year tomorrow, the 29th. I've never ever left a voicemail or a thing like this. I've always done emails. So forgive me if it sounds weird or if it came across weird. But anyways, looking forward to hearing the rest of your podcast. You're the best. HP, baby. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
I'm the best. Maureen, you're the best. And HP, baby. These are the absolute gifts that I get on a regular basis. And I'm just so absolutely grateful for everyone that is listening, everyone that emails, everyone that sends a voice recording. I just want you guys to know that we are saving lives out here. Seriously, we are doing God's work, and it feels damn good. So, kudos to us all. So now a quick message from our sponsor, and then we jump right into Cole's story. Dope Sick. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. Now back to the show. Hi, Cole. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
It's great to have you on the show. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm wonderful. It was a beautiful October day in Austin.
Oh, I love it. All right, so Cole, let's dive right in. Tell us about how your life is today. Give us all of it, the hobbies, exercise, your normal routine, including recovery.
All right. Well, my normal routine, I wake up in the morning cuddling my Bernese mountain dog.
Oh, my God.
That's the first thing that we do. It's a little different every day. I like it that way. Every day is like a new exciting day. It's normally a mix of yoga and body work. I do Thai massage and table massage. I film YouTube videos. I'm booking yoga workshops. I'm having lunch dates, more yoga. I just recently started to try to create a new relationship with running. So that has been interesting. And it's been wonderful. I'm setting my own schedule and just really getting to do the things that I really enjoy. as a job.
Absolutely. So, Cole, tell us, how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power?
I've really found my higher power through my yoga practice is really how I came to come to that. I struggled in AA, as I think a lot of people do.
Yes.
And it really started to make sense to me on my yoga mat. Like I started to really begin to come inside and start to find like some inner power, I guess you would say. There's this one quote that I love from BKS Iyengar that says, there's a dormant spark of divinity in each of us, that it must be fanned into flames by yoga. And I found that way after the fact, but I was like, that's exactly what it is. So I think on my yoga mat, I was able to really kind of come back into my own body. I spent so much time trying to get away from myself and just to be able to sit with myself and to listen, that I was really able to start to make a contact.
Absolutely. So, Cole, how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
It is August 26th of 2013. So, yeah, going on a little over 2 years now, which is unbelievable. Completely.
That
completely unbelievable.
Oh, of course, that 2-year milestone is huge. It's fantastic. I love it. So, tell us a little bit about how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Well, I remember it very clearly, as I think a lot of us do. I think I was 13 or 14, and I was at like a friend's house that I played soccer with, and her parents were out of town. And we were having like a pool party, and we'd gotten into some peppermint schnapps and some rum, and we were floating in some inner tubes in the pool. And I remember like sitting in it and like spinning the tube around, and I was like looking up at the sky, and the stars were out, and I felt so amazing. And I remember just lying there talking to myself, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, it was hands down, no question. Like, I had found it.
All right, Cole, you're all warmed up, so I'm going to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So, Cole, take it away.
All right. So, I started with peppermint schnapps.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, I did. So after that, it was, we were so young, and we just kind of started, here and there, smoking pot or getting some of our parents' alcohol. My parents didn't drink. They just never had. I was never around it. Come to find out later, my mother's like older brother was an alcoholic, and my dad was really big into sports his whole life. So he just chose not to drink. Right. He was like a collegiate athlete. But so it was never really in my house. I was never around it. But we started to find it at other people's houses. And, that was started to be like kind of the goal. That's what we were looking to do. Even really at a young age, it started to become, a little bit of an obsession. Like that's what we're talking about all week. Like who can we find older brother to buy us something? And, we weren't hardly drinking anything or doing anything, but it was this really exciting, even just the prospect of getting it was exciting. Everything was exciting about it. And, it was just fun and like a little devious and just kind of all of that excitement that you probably have as a teenager, or I did.
Nope, I did too.
doing something naughty, I guess, or doing something bad.
Right.
So, very quickly, I was cheerleading and playing sports, and I was a really good student. And, I always had a hard time, like, not fitting in. I was popular, but like there was always like a group of people that I wanted to hang out with, like the older kids that I was nervous around, like I had social anxiety around. I just remembered that anxiety. And, once I started the alcohol and, the smoking pot and all that, I lost it. But I kind of also started hanging out with, obviously different people. Mm-hmm. So I was surrounding myself around people that were doing what I was wanting to do, and I wasn't nervous around. And, I was able to shed that anxiety. So very quickly, my friends are changing. Everything's starting to change. I am like dating this older guy, of course, and that's always part of it.
I love the of course.
Of course. And I started sneaking out of the house at night. I was like
Mm-hmm.
sneaking out of the house like every night to go and to drink and be with this guy. And I
Yep.
could still probably close my eyes and like retrace my steps through the house, like turn off the fan here, turn up the air conditioning, like the whole way, my little pathway that I had. And I started doing that. And, I wind up sleeping with this guy, and I'm 14. And the first time I have sex, I got pregnant.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much
So
older was this guy?
he was 18.
Ah, okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So he was 18. And,
So he was
so
shitting a brick.
oh my God, I can't even imagine. So it eventually comes out. This kind of year is a little fuzzy just because I think I went into like mortification mode. But, we wind up, my parents find out, the whole school finds out. We wind up having a termination, and we move states. Like my parents moved me to a different state,
Yep.
to a different school.
I get it.
I just like shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I won't talk to my family. I really don't even remember what was going on with me. It's just kind of a blur. But I think at that time, that is when I was introduced to shame. That's the first time in my life, like never before that. I didn't have a history or a past of, a bad childhood or anything like that. But whenever that happened, I would have been an alcoholic no matter what. So this didn't change my path, but I had
certainly didn't help.
It didn't help.
No.
No, it didn't help.
Mm-mm.
But it labeled myself as bad.
Yeah.
Like I didn't make a bad choice and have an accident, and it wasn't like a cause and effect thing. In my head, it was like, I am bad.
Mm.
So I started to carry that with me. And then, of course, I hate my parents
Yeah.
by now.
We all do.
And I know. Gosh, poor parents. But then, it just continued. And through high school, I just continued. I'd meet the wrong crowd. My poor dad is picking me up from bonfires. Like, by now I had this big phase where I was only drinking straight tequila. I don't know. And wearing a cowboy hat. Like, that was my gig at these bonfires, like super goofy. But I was just drinking to oblivion. And I also remember spending a lot of time thinking about like how to get completely trashed but keep my cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like where that line was. We get very precise and like mathematical about our addiction. And I was like 15.
You can try.
Oh my gosh, what a mess.
You can try.
I know.
But after the fucking 12th drink, math goes out the window.
Oh yeah, totally. So I'm at this school for a while, and then I get sent to like this rehab for like bad kids in the middle of the woods in Idaho.
Whoa.
And like learn how to build fire with sticks and like all kinds of really intense things. And so then I come out of that and I hate my parents even more. And they moved me to another place. And this happens to be a big party town in the middle of Missouri. It's called Lake of the Ozarks. And my father knew the principal there. He was good friends with him, so thought that, I could kind of be watched over. But, really this was a huge party town, and this is where I was introduced to cocaine. Yeah, a lot of cocaine and ecstasy and crack cocaine.
Wow, how old were you?
16.
Oh
17.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
always looked really old for my age. I'm about 6 foot tall.
Oh my, really?
Yeah. And so I've always carried myself in an older fashion. I had a fake ID when I was like 15. It was ridiculous. But I was introduced into this kind of atmosphere. It was a lot of money and a lot of parties and a lot of everybody drove yachts. You drove your yacht to the bar instead of like your cars.
Right.
So I'm in this environment and I'm feeling like euphoric. Yeah, I'm getting to go wherever I want. I'm getting, I'm riding on these big boats, these big yachts, and it's very glamorous in my mind. And I guess a little bit before this, I graduated when I was 17, so I was young as well. So I leave my parents' house early. If I remember correctly, I crawled out of my parents' house.
Because
like
you were
Yes.
you were wasted?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And luckily, I'm happy that a lot of these memories we only have half memories of. Unfortunately, they remember all of them. But yeah, so I leave my parents' house like midway through my senior year, and I just start living with friends and doing that whole thing. But yeah, so I'm living this like so-called glamorous lifestyle, hanging out with these like much older men at these big parties. And it doesn't seem dirty when you're smoking crack in a mansion.
Right. Right.
It was a lot different. That's not where I ended. But that's where it started.
That's where it
like
started.
I wasn't getting those like thoughts of like, this is nasty, or this is, I was playing with the cool kids.
Well, what year was this?
This would have been, I think I graduated high school in 2002. So about 2002.
Okay. All right. Well, cocaine's always been considered the glamour drug. It's always been, a glamorous sort of drug for the elite because A, it's so expensive, and because of the effects that it has. So, when you first come into it, you're enamored by it. It's almost like a fantasy world.
Just, yeah, the invincibility. And, when I kind of think back about, the glamour part of it, I can see myself with like my head thrown back laughing. And it's like bliss and euphoria and just like this. I mean, I can have that picture, which I know is false, but like that's kind of how I saw myself, I suppose.
That's how we all did. I mean,
right.
The first time I did cocaine, I was 29 years old. And I go, oh my God, I can't believe I waited till I was 29 to do the most amazing drug I've ever done in my life. I should have been taking this since when I was in high school. I would have passed.
No kidding.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, it's wild. So I wind up leaving that area. I had been in a pretty volatile relationship with a cocaine dealer, of course.
Of course.
And that was just went way far south. I leave the place, thankfully. So it was good. Yeah, it was really, really good. I was getting out of a horrible relationship, and I was getting away from copious amounts of cocaine just in the closet. It was endless. And I wind up leaving, and I really look back at this at a very lucky, as a very lucky that I wind up. It got so bad that I had to leave relationship wise because I was still pretty fresh. I probably could have kept going on that track for a while.
Right.
Yeah, I remember laying in bed right before I left, a few days before I left, and we had like smoked so much that my throat was closing up, and I was scared to fall asleep because I didn't think I could breathe.
Oh.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
And that anxiety that comes along with that. So thankfully, I leave and I go to Colorado, and I'm going to like do this fresh start thing. And I moved to Vail with $30 and 3 credit cards because I just turned 18, and that's how many credit cards they'll give you.
And I don't think Vail's very cheap.
It's not.
No.
I had a very grandiose idea of myself.
Oh.
So I'm moving to Vail, and it all worked. The first day I went there, I found a place to stay and a job. I had been cocktailing, of course, and I had a blast. I mean, I still have dreams about Vail. I just really did. This is before I really knew that I was in trouble. This first year in Colorado, this is really before I actually knew that, I was in big trouble. But everybody in these mountain towns, it's just a party. Everybody's doing it. So I wasn't like standing out. And I wind up living in resort towns for about 8 years. I lived in Vail. I went to Telluride and Tahoe and Steamboat Springs, all over. But the problem with these things is like you can hide easier. You can hide from other people and you can hide from yourself.
Right.
Because it's more rampant. Like those mountain towns, I swear, just kind of breed it. But, and, working in bars and things. But I was able to hide it a little bit better. I just partied. That's what everybody did. And I met this beautiful gypsy boy, and we moved to Santa Cruz. So we're out on the West Coast finally. So I'm kind of away from all my friends, and I've moved on this romantic excursion in a 77 Catalina to the West Coast. But then I'm here with just this one guy, and I started to realize that I wasn't really around, all of my friends who we'd drink beers before we went and go to snowboard, or there wasn't like the people drinking Bloody Marys at the bars. A little bit different in Santa Cruz.
Right.
And I felt so odd. And I was like, I thought I was depressed, which I've never been. Like, that's not my nature. But I thought I was depressed or there was something wrong. Everything else is wrong, of course, besides what we're doing. But I start hiding my alcohol. And, I'm dating, like, he's obviously a party boy.
Right.
But I'm hiding it. And I'm starting to drink vodka in the mornings. And that's really when that started. The hiding and the drinking in the mornings, just to start to keep my body with enough in it to not mentally feel like shit and not to physically feel like shit, because I'm starting to shake already.
Okay.
At 21. And, we live out there, and we moved to Tahoe. We're doing the same thing. I'm moving all the time. We're moving all the time. We're not happy anywhere we are, kind of, because it's always the environment and not what's going on. And we wind up going through a bad breakup, and it was really heartbreaking to me. And I ended up in a rehab in Santa Cruz. And there I was laying in a yoga class, and I was supposed to be in detox, but I was laying there like shaking and hating myself. And I hear this lady talking, and she's got the sweetest, softest voice. And she's talking about how she used to be a heroin addict, and now, she's in recovery and she teaches yoga, and part of me is like, bullshit. And then the other part is like, wow. I take yoga through that treatment, and I just remember like, God, like one day, I didn't have any plans on staying sober, by the way. I didn't feel good, and I wanted to feel better for a little bit. But in the back of my head, that seed was planted that like someday I think I could do that, but I didn't think I would ever get sober. So that's kind of where I was introduced to yoga. So I kind of kept that persona with me a little bit. I really liked that. I was already kind of a hippie, but I liked that kind of lifestyle, I started kind of reading about it here and there. So that was kind of the duality of, starting to look at maybe something on the other side.
Right.
But that doesn't happen for a long time. I go back to Tahoe, and it got really, really bad. I went back to Tahoe with another friend of mine, and I don't remember very much of that season. And he says it was a nightmare, that I'm starting to really physically get really bad now. I'm very, very shaky if I'm not drinking, and I'm pretty much blacked out most of the time. But my tolerance is very high. So like no one else really knows it, but I'm very like a high functioning blackout girl. I can go to work and, do my thing, but just, how it is. It's just bizarre.
Right.
How some of us can function like that. So it wasn't like everyone was like, oh my God, like she needs help. It wasn't like that at all, unfortunately. And I get a DUI while I'm out there, and I started went to my first AA meeting, which was bizarre, really bizarre. I thought it was so bizarre. And I had to start taking AA classes, or not AA classes, alcohol classes in Tahoe. And I remember going to this class, and I remember it was this, I still want to find this guy. I still have it to find this guy, but this Indian, this wonderful man that kind of took an interest in me, or maybe not an interest in me, but just saw like how much pain I was in. And okay, so I would go to class, and I would have to drink before I would go. So they start breathalyzing me. So they're kicking me out. And then the days that I go that I'm not drinking, I just can't drink within a certain amount of hours. So I get there in class, and I'm like convulsing in my seat.
Oh.
And he's like, you're going to die. Like, you are way too young to be having this many physical problems.
Right.
And I try with him several times to go. He also runs like a detox center, and I try several times to like go into detox, but I can stay for like one day. I can't stay. I just can't. I can't do it. And I wind up leaving, and I tried that several times. And throughout this, my parents had kind of been out several times to either take me to treatment or to take me, to different various things. And they were just freaked out. Didn't know what to do either. But through this whole Tahoe experience, the second Tahoe experience, it was just really bleak and very, very bad. My friends at times, I couldn't eat, and I didn't know I was having pancreatitis, but I didn't realize that was at the time. Like he would be like, I would have to eat just applesauce. I couldn't eat anything. Just really these really big physical problems. And I went home. My grandmother died. So I flew home to Missouri, and my friend came with me. And it was about 3 days. She had a funeral. The night of her funeral, I'm sleeping in my old bedroom. And I don't remember this, but I guess my body just goes all exorcist style.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And my friend said it was so scary, and I start screaming, and I kind of come to, and my uncle, my whole family is staying at the house, of course. My uncle is carrying me up the stairs, and I'm having a grand mal seizure because I haven't drank in 3 days.
Yeah.
That's probably the first time I hadn't drank in 3 days, I guess, since besides the rehab, which I did medical detox. But so my whole family's there. So I'm in the hospital for like a week, and I keep trying to tell the doctor that it's stress related because my grandma died.
Oh, wow.
And it's not, it's not at all. It's withdrawal. And I still hadn't even that hadn't connected, and it didn't connect for a while. I wound up going back to Tahoe and continuing, on that thing. But now I'm scared about these seizures, because even though I won't admit that it's from alcohol, I'm scared of it, and I start to use that as an excuse as well. Like, say somebody's like, no, you can't have any more alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be like, oh, you better get me some. I'm going to have a seizure. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
And I even remember faking one time. Terrible. Just the shit that we do. Get me some alcohol and I will be fine.
Yep.
So I get to this point again in Tahoe to where, I'm not working now. I'm finally to a point to where I'm not working. I start to get Xanax. I try to self-detox. And that's, where things really go haywire again. And I ended up at another treatment center in Oklahoma called Narconon. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yes. What an adventure. It's a Scientology rehab.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Oh, it's interesting. I only stayed. Okay, so I always have to do medical detox, but they don't believe in any type of medication at all. So first, I had to do 7 days just straight DTs, and it was awful. It was awful. But what they would do, it was really strange. I only wind up staying for 7 days, but they would come into my room, and they'd have a clipboard, and they would say, look around the room and tell me something you can have. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I feel so awful. And look around the room and tell me something you can have. And I would be like, my suitcase. And they would be like, wonderful, wonderful, and start taking notes. And they would do this a lot. I never figured out what exactly they were doing with that. Or they would tell me to touch something, touch the picture frame and then let it go. And they'd be like, very good, very good. I'm not really sure what all goes on there. I've had a couple friends that have went all the way through it, though, and they say it's definitely bizarre.
It sounds absolutely bizarre.
Absolutely bizarre.
So how are you, because here's the deal, you're having these grand mal seizures because you're not drinking. You're having DTs because you're not drinking. You could die from the withdrawals, and they're not giving you anything.
Nothing.
For 7 days.
Nothing. Vitamins.
Oh, my God. That's
vitamins.
Wild.
Yeah.
So
wild.
So you never had a seizure while you were in there?
I didn't.
So
I don't know how I didn't.
Some kind of mystic pizza shit going on in there, man. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
I know. I mean, it was a bad 7 days.
Oof.
But they, I didn't have a seizure. But whenever 7 days were over, I couldn't use the phone until I was out of detox, and they wouldn't let me out of there for 7 days. And then I went and I called my mother, and I'm like, Mom. My mom is very Christian, and I'm like, do you know I'm at a Scientology rehab? Because they had just grabbed me from Tahoe and took me to the first place.
Right.
Put me on a plane and dropped me off at this place that has great reviews. And she's like, oh honey, I'm already on my way. She was already on her way from Missouri to come and pick me back up.
Oh, thank God.
Because she had no idea. And she's like, I want her to be sober, but I don't want her to be brainwashed. So whenever we leave, it was crazy. It was really bizarre. They were surrounding our car. like getting us not to leave, like on walkie-talkies, telling my mom that they're signing my death certificate. Like, it was crazy. It was really crazy.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, wild.
Okay,
Wild. Scared
note
my
to
mother
self.
to death.
Yeah. Listeners, Narcanon. No.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. But I'm like, yay, free pass. Like, I just busted out of rehab with my mom.
Oh, dude.
You know? So I go back to my parents' house, and all I'm doing is looking up like these terrible articles about Narcanon, and like to make my parents, think they made the right decision. And I'm just going to do this on my own. And, I just kind of like did some working out. I went to some AA meetings in this tiny little town that was like me and 6 60-plus-year-old men that all like became my grandpa. And I stayed there for like a month or something. And then I told my parents, I'm leaving. I'm going, I don't know, I was going back to Colorado or to Tahoe or somewhere.
Yeah.
So of course, that doesn't pan out. But so through all of those places, I just started, I started getting this MO of getting flooded in my system, getting scared. Then I start going to the hospital. I start going to the hospital for the benzos. I start this cycle of, that was just my MO. It became my MO, and I started visiting hospitals all the time. I was in a lot, and I would always wind up leaving. But I was wanting them to give me medication. And, it's really just a blur. For a few more years, it's just kind of a blur. I went to another rehab somewhere in there. I don't even know.
But they were taking.
I was only getting
when you would go to the hospitals, and they would give you benzos. What was the purpose of putting you on the benzos?
To keep me from seizing.
Ah, okay. So this is
Yeah.
to get you. This is to wean you off the alcohol, the benzodiazepines.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, they wean me off the alcohol. And you know what else they do though is if I decide to have a big party night, or I'm going to a festival, or it's going to be a big party night, if I take it before I go to bed, I won't wake up shaking. So I find that out. So that's another thing that I'm doing. Or I'm going to doctors in line to get them. So I'm really just using them as a crutch. I'm just using them to party more. And then eventually that brings me into a wall, those two together. Man, just on and on. And that just feels like a loop. And I did that for quite a while. I started to reach out. I would start to reach out to people. Like I liked going to see counselors. I wasn't liking the AA, but I knew that there was a problem, and I was reaching out. And I don't really know in what aspect necessarily. Like I'd call the AA hotline and have people come over and hang out with me. Why, I just am telling them sob stories. I think there's something about some part of our addiction that we get addicted to, like the tragedy of ourselves.
Yes.
Like, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Like we want some validation of how bad we are. And I think that's what I was looking for. Just bizarre. Like it sounds so sick, but that's exactly what we are. We were really sick.
Bunch of drama queens.
Wow. Totally. I was such a drama queen. And so I do this for a while, and I end up in Steamboat Springs, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to the hospital every few days, or the fire truck will show up at my house, or all kinds of things. Just calling the ambulance right and left. Just madness. My family comes and picks me up. They agree to come and get me. I agree, I guess, to go. I'm completely out of money. I have no money. I've lost all my jobs. I'm completely out of money. I have pancreatitis. I've been at the hospital for this. My skin is yellow. It's just bad. The withdrawals are so intense. And, I'm just like, I'm sitting outside waiting for the liquor stores to open in the morning. Like,
oh my God.
It was just so bad. I couldn't do anything else. I was all consumed. My energy was all consumed with drinking or getting high or hiding it or not smelling like it or making sure I have enough for later. Like I was on a loop. I was just on a loop. And my family, I guess, had been looking for a while. They'd been talking to this rehab down in Austin for a while. and they were just waiting for me to say yes. So eventually they tell me yes, and I say yes partly because like they can't put me on a plane. I can't fly because I have to keep drinking.
Right.
And even the doctor at the rehab that I went to was like, yeah, you're gonna have to drive her down here. So this was like my last ticket to drink. So my family was saying, we'll come and get you and take you, and you got 24 or 20 hours, and you can drink whatever you want on the way. I was like,
oh my
right.
God.
All right.
Dude.
So I finally do it. And, my dad comes from one direction across the country to get my stuff. My uncle comes from another direction to pick me up. And he drives me down. And if I did not sing classic rock to him the whole way down, and just was a mess. Really sad, though. I remember like making conversation and, talking and singing and laughing. But I was like so sad. And we get down there, and I'm so loaded by the time I get there. I pretty much wake up the next day and I'm in Texas.
Right.
It's kind of the way that came about. And this was a 3-month rehab. The other ones had been 1 month. And hands down, I recommend a 3-month if you're going the treatment route. Because at 1 month, they could have not let me out of there. Like, I was so jaded still.
Yeah.
Like, my mind, I was still crazy. The 3-month really did make a difference, even though I was not happy about it. I was not a happy camper. But I get out of this place and I'm in Austin and I'm at a sober house. I still don't think I'm going to be sober, but I think that I'm going to have to try. I don't have any money, but my parents will pay for me to go to the sober living. So I wind up staying in Austin, and I get about 6 months sober. And this is pretty incredible. I had moved out of the sober house. I was going to yoga all the time, and things were good. Things were really good, and I was really happy. I wasn't telling anybody that I was an alcoholic. I hadn't came to grips with that part of it yet.
Right.
Like, I could tell myself that and say it in the rooms, but I couldn't tell other people. And that had been a problem before. Like, I had relapsed several times, when I had a little bit of sobriety, just, out of sheer not wanting to tell people. But I went out to lunch with this guy, and it was a massage client of mine, and we went to this like really nice French restaurant. And I remember the waiter coming over and saying, "Would you like a glass of Chardonnay or a glass of Sauvignon Blanc?" And I just said, "Sauvignon Blanc."
Oh.
And he brought a glass of wine to me, and I took one sip, and my whole body, all the way down to my toes, were like, fuck yeah. Like butterflies through my whole system.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, of course I wasn't buzzed or anything, but just that one little system, like all of my cells were like, here we go. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
So, I made it through that day, and I think it was the very next day that I think I remember like going to REI to buy this coat or something and like drinking a beer in their bathroom, something crazy. Like not being able to stop, not being able to not stop at the gas station that was next to REI. Because I'd already like opened that can of worms.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't like even wait to get home or anything. It was just like I just had to have it. That opened up the worst of the worst. So I went to treatment here in Austin, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody else. I didn't have, any friends here. I only knew people in the recovery community, which, it seems like that could be a good thing, right? But not when you relapse. Right. Because then I only knew the other people who relapsed. So the people that I called were like the worst of the worst. My people who, yeah.
The other hardcore partiers.
The other hardcore partiers. And I didn't think it was partying. So by this time, the party had ended a while back, but by this time, like, I hadn't been to a bar. Like, there was no fun involved. By this time, it was like, you have all that guilt attached to it after you're doing all this. So it was like hiding and, sneaking around. And I had started drinking, and I had this really great job. I had this really great job at the spa. And, I started drinking at work. And, I had been doing this for years. I had to take alcohol to work. I would put it in my Nalgene and in my water bottle. And I just had to keep enough in my system. But it started getting bad, and I started getting some benzos, that whole cycle kind of again. And I wind up leaving. I didn't have anything with me one day at work, and I was in the middle of a massage, and like my withdrawals were so bad and I was shaking so bad. I just left. I turned the client over and I walked out, and I called my friend and he came and picked me up, and he was a junkie. And I hadn't to this point done, I mean, I had smoked some heroin or something, but to this point I hadn't done anything. And I was like, I really want to quit drinking. Like, this is crazy. And so he has a bright idea that this will help me not drink. And of course I say yes. So we start down this path. So for the next probably 4 months, I'm now adding heroin onto my resume.
Oh, man.
And, you know, not in a good place I mean, nobody's ever in a good place to start doing that. But I had so much, you know, I was already in that hiding mentality, and it was just bad.
There's a lot of sneakiness.
I get kicked out of my house. I was living with people in recovery. Yeah, the sneakiness of it. You know, that's a really big piece of it, that sneakiness. I end up kind of living in some hotels. I went to a sober house at one point, but got kicked out for drinking. So I was kind of like back and forth between kind of flopping at people's houses and hotels. I went to a detox at one point, and I left with somebody in detox, and he was a beautiful schizophrenic Lebanese junkie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. And we left detox together. Then it got worse from there. You know, for a month of that, they let me back in the detox. I came back out and did the same thing. I mean, my family is not talking to me. My friends aren't talking to me. My counselor's calling the cops on me if she can figure out where I am, because she's trying to say that I'm a harm to myself. She's just trying to get somebody to pick me up.
Right. And
I just don't care about anything. So in between, you know, the hotel and the crack house, it was bad. It was bad. And this was somewhere where I didn't think I was going to be. So talking about, you know, smoking crack in a mansion and then smoking crack at a compound, you know, trailers with no wheels, and prostitution and children running around. I mean, it was really nasty. And just kind of looking around, I had some moment of kind of looking around at like, what has happened? What has happened? And I was laying down on this bed by this girl, and some people were doing their thing, like splitting up, whatever they were splitting up. And I was laying down by this girl, and there was a mirror on the ceiling. And I looked up, and she was sleeping next to me on the bed. And she was probably about 15 or 16. She was very young.
God.
And it just kind of made me think, like, oh my God, this poor girl. And like, I have been doing this for a long time, you know, and thinking about myself. And it was a few days after that I had done, I don't even know, whatever it was they gave me. I don't even know. I wasn't even asking questions. I was just putting my arm out. And I was standing up, and then I dropped to my knees, and I was trying to talk, and my words were coming out like, more, more. I remember them being like, oh, shit, like, oh my God. Like, I remember them freaking out above me. And then I woke up like hours later. Nobody's there. You know, you've heard that story. And I don't know what happened. I don't know. I still don't really know what happened, but I woke up and I was trying to make it back to my hotel or something. And I remember it was like 104 degrees, something. It felt like hotter than that. And I was trying to walk across the street to this bus stop, and I like couldn't turn my head because my brain was vibrating in my skull. So I'd have to turn my whole body to be able to look across the street to see if there was a car coming. And I like turned myself back around and kind of head on. And I got back to this, I think I was renting a room at the moment. I got back to this room, and it was across the street from a liquor store, and I bought some alcohol that I thought would last me for the next couple days because I just wanted to lay there and die. And I tried to drink it, and it didn't do anything. That's my medicine. It's also my poison, but it's my medicine. That's always been my medicine. And it wasn't working. It wasn't doing anything. And so I tried that for the next couple days, and I can't. It's still not working. And I've kind of just evaluated what has been happening, especially these last 6 months, and what has, you know, kind of, I laid there for a few days and got to kind of re-look at everything. And I remember this girl at this treatment center telling me this, sitting outside talking to me, And she told me, I finally got to a point when I realized that I could be happy or I could be drunk. And that really stuck with me. And that's what I was thinking about. And I really, to the core of me, realized that I wasn't going to have it both anymore. Like
Right.
at one point in my life, it did make me happy, whether it was fake or not. But there was no way in hell that it was ever happening again. And it was only getting worse quickly. So I called the sober house that I'd stayed at, that I'd been kicked out of. No one's talking to me. But I call the sober house and I say, I'm done. I don't have any money. I can't get any money, but I'm done. And is there any way that I can come back? And they said yes.
Oh, man.
And I had to wait for like 3 days or something. And oh my God, it was awful. But I waited and I, tried to drink as little as I could. But this was like the only sober house in Austin that you don't have to have 30 days to go to. It's a high risk sober house. There's only one of them here that will take you in with like a couple days sober. Just incredible.
Yeah.
And they let me in. And, I even got there a day early. I wasn't supposed to come until the next day. And I just came with my bag. And I just said, I'll sleep on the couch. And, I'd never been in that situation before. I was, fortunate. I don't know if it is fortunate really, but to be in a situation where my family always helped me. And, in hindsight, it wasn't until they didn't help me, they weren't helping me at all, that, I finally got off, realized that I'm going to have to do this. And whenever I got into that sober house, I just felt, this enormous feeling of safety came over me. That's the only thing I can say about it, is this enormous feeling of safety and being around, people that know what I'm talking about, but are on the other side of it, or trying to be on the other side of it.
Right.
Because I was hanging out with people who knew what I was talking about, but they weren't trying to do anything about it. And that was August 26th, a couple of years ago. I started going to meetings again. I started yoga, man. I went throughout those years, it was about 8 years from when I took my first yoga class and then I got sober. But through those years, if I ever had a little bit of sobriety, I was going to yoga like crazy. That was always kind of my barometer. Like, I'm doing really good if I'm doing yoga, because that means like I have my shit together.
Right.
And I'm feeling good. And very quickly, yoga has always made me feel very powerful, like mentally and physically. But it's always been a barometer. So I go to this yoga class, and I had been going previously because I had those 6 months sober, so I'd been really into that community. But I go to the studio and I unroll my mat and I get into child's pose and I just start bawling, like hysterically. And I was just like, oh my God, I think I'm going to make it. Or at least like I have a hope of making it, because that mat like symbolized that hope to me.
Yeah.
And I stayed. I just kept coming back. And, that's really, for me personally, that has been my biggest asset, has been being able to find my power through yoga and that spiritual practice, and switching, having that step in and be able to put myself in a place of power, like to find and dig that up out of me that had been so hidden. And I think it saved my life. Wow.
It did save your life.
So saved my life. And it's just been incredible. And of course it was hard. And, I lived in that sober house for like 3 months, and it sucked. I shared a room with 2 other people. It's not fun. And shared a bathroom and all kinds of things you don't want to do. But, the yoga, and then one other piece that I'll say that I really think that changed everything is that, before I had said that I hadn't told anybody, and I decided that I was going to have to tell people. And, I thought about a couple of my girlfriends that were really strong women in my life that had long stopped talking to me.
Right.
But, that I'm like, what would they do in this situation? Because, mentally I knew that the only thing I can't do is drink and use drugs. Like, I know that, but that's my everything. You take that away, I don't have anything left. Like, I thought I was going to be a shell of a person. I really, really did. I didn't think there was anything else there. But yeah, to take that away, it would be empty. But I thought about what these two girls, what my two friends would say, and they would be like, they would own it. They would be like, and I can't drink. I can do everything else. I can't drink and I can't use, but I can do everything else, and I can do it well. So I was just going to fake that. So the next time somebody had asked me something about if I offered, some guy had asked me to take me out for drinks or something, and I was like, no, I don't drink anymore. I've done enough of that. Or I don't know what I said. I don't drink anymore. I'm in recovery, or I've had my dance cards full. I use that sometimes. And, the first time it felt so weird coming out of my mouth. I'm like, who's talking? But then it got easier and easier. And then people started asking me questions about it. And then it was like, no thing. And I'm like, that held me back for so long. It did, just the thinking that I had made up some shame around it. But so also coming into my power on that aspect, of not hiding from it, being like, no, this is who I am. Like, here I am. And so when those switches came on, it got easier and easier. And then things just started happening, and they haven't stopped happening. Amazing thing. I mean, this sounds so cliche, but I swear it's true. That spa that I worked at, that it was such a fabulous job. We kind of had some mutual friends, and the owner called me a year after I quit there. So I was about 6 months sober. And she said, Cole, I've heard you've been doing so wonderful, and we're so proud of you, and we want you to come back to the spa. And I was like, oh my God, like so happy. And I just have to laugh because, all those AA people were right.
Yep.
And just so funny. And things just, continued to roll that way. I got my yoga teacher training. Things just started happening. All kinds of things started happening. I'm 2 years into it now, and now I've, studied with Nikki Myers. I am teaching the outpatient yoga and recovery group from the old rehab that I went to in Austin.
Wow.
So I have completely come full circle to being that lady that I listened to like 8 years ago, that I remember saying, I want to be her someday, but I probably can't because I won't ever be able to. But I have like completely came full circle. And I am that lady to these people. And seriously, they look at me and they're like, who, you? No way, you're so healthy. I'm like, oh no. I was a hot mess. But it's just amazing. And I'm teaching, I mentioned I'm teaching, I do Thai massage. I've done Thai massage for many years. I've been teaching Thai massage retreats in Bali and in Asia, in Thailand. And that's incredible. Whenever I tell my story, whenever we all introduce each other at the beginning of the retreat, I can't tell any part of my story without at least throwing my addiction a line. So of course, I'll mention it. And, if not every one of those people at some point during that retreat came up to me one by one in private, in whatever, their shame, and told me something about themselves or something about their family, or, something personal to them. I just thought it was so interesting that, we could have all had like a conversation, but, it's one by one that they were able, to open up to me about that. And, the more that those things keep happening, just the more and more validated, and the more, and I don't know if validated is the right word, but
yeah,
just the more that I see what like a boon this is for myself and for other people. And it's just phenomenal. I would have never, ever. I had my 2 years sober in Sorrento, Italy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jeez,
I know.
You're killing me.
And I was like, oh my God. And I remember thinking I could never go to Italy because I was a big wino. That was one of my,
right,
the thing I drank the most of, like 4 bottles a day. I'm like, I could never go to Italy. And my mother met me over there in Italy.
Oh man, that's
and
beautiful.
We're working on a relationship in Italy. And the things that have happened, there's all kinds of things that happen, but the things that are happened, like I could have like tried to make up what I wanted it to look like, and I would not have written it this well.
No, they tell you that. They say, don't sell yourself short.
They do.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. Don't write, you could make a list of everything you want to accomplish, and you'd be selling yourself short.
Yeah, totally. There's no way that you can believe it at the time, but it's just true. I'm one of those people now. I'm preaching that it works. It's wild.
Oh, you're a miracle. So that's your story.
That's my story. Yeah.
So, and you were gunning and running for 8 years?
No, I'm no longer. I started doing yoga 8 years ago. I got sober when I was 29, so I started when I was 13.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
wow.
It's a long time.
That's a long time to be out there doing the deal. You answered a few already of the questions that I ask for the newcomers. You talk about your aha moment. You talk about, what was keeping you from coming into recovery. That's all very clear and evident. But one thing that you did bring up that I'd like to touch on is you said that you'd been to a bunch of 30-day rehabs, and you finally went to a 90-day rehab, and that's what you would recommend. All right. What did you do differently at the end of those 90 days?
The 90 days is needed. And it's not that they're teaching you stuff. And, I've been to many rehabs, and it's not that I'm learning stuff in there. That's not it. It's just, for me anyway, you're getting to do self-reflection. That's fantastic. But it's the separation, I think, for me.
From the outside world.
It's the separation from the outside world. It's separation and introspection. Yeah, definitely. For me personally, and, anyone who's like, in a very severe way, 30 days, you're still detoxing. Like, your mind is not clear. And the sober living for me was astronomical. I don't know what would have happened if that wouldn't have happened.
Perfect. Cole, you have such an amazing story. Oh, it's just absolutely, it's heartbreaking, and it's so uplifting at the end because it's such a miracle. It's so amazing that, you're alive today. It is just absolutely, it is a miracle. It is a miracle. And
my last name's Chance.
Yeah, Cole Chance. It's absolutely beautiful.
I used to tell people that. I wore that out. I used to tell my mom that all the time, or like just tell people that. They were like so annoyed with me. Like, you've had your chances, honey.
It's fantastic. So Cole, let's dive into a little bit for the newcomers here. We've already answered some of the questions. I don't know if you want to expand any more on what was really, the first question I ask is, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery? You kind of covered that, but was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that aspect?
I really just didn't want it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think I was ready. I don't know how you can look at my story and not think someone's ready, but I just wasn't. And even when I was going into rehabs and the hospitals and the detoxes and all of that, like, I just wanted an immediate help. So I definitely think that you need to be real with yourself about, are you really ready? I bartended through my 20s. I was the party girl. That's who I was. Like, that's who I remember telling a counselor, like, well, then buy me a rocking chair. Like, if I'm going to have to get sober, because my life will be over. Like, I'll just, I didn't know. I had no idea. I didn't think I would have a personality. I didn't think that I was going to be able to dance or to laugh or to make love or to anything. I didn't have any prior knowledge of life. That was probably one of the scariest things. Just to think about it, actually just right now, it just kind of brings me to tears. Just that moment of being that terrified of not knowing yourself at all, but only knowing yourself as that, to have that ripped away from you is horrifying. Wow. And that it's such a real feeling of, it's terror. But you have to, I guess, get comfortable the unknown, or to leave room for the unknown. And I don't know what finally brings somebody to that precipice, but
Yeah, I tell you, I'm glad I asked you because you said it beautifully. It painted a wonderful picture of that resistance to change. So I'm going to ask you then the next one, all right, because you covered this too. But at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you finally accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
On my yoga mat, when I unrolled that yoga mat, I still remember, I was still shaking. I felt awful, that anxiety that's like coursing through your veins. It's like palpable. And going in there and unrolling my mat, and just this feeling of, at the same time, of despair, fear, and of hope, like all at the same time. And, and for me to be in child's pose, which is like a pose of reverence, of surrender. I mean, that's what that pose is. And, it's some of the stuff that Nikki Myers touches on is like how, these poses, the physical, they also like can bring out, the physical pose can bring, an emotional response. And I wasn't even thinking about it whenever I got down and got into that pose. I wasn't even thinking about it. And it was just incredible. And I'll never forget that moment. And probably will neither anyone else in the class. I was like...
All right, so moving on now. Do you have a favorite, Cole, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer?
Oh, I do. I love to read. I'm a big reader. Okay, some of the ones that helped me, there's one called Drinking, a Love Story. And it's by a lady named Carolyn Knapp. And it's an incredible book. And it's about her journey. And I found that many years before I got sober. I just happened to find it at a flea market, like poking out at me. Very auspicious. And that really, really resonated with me. There's another book called Still Water by William Alexander. And it is alcoholism, mindfulness, and ordinary recovery. He's a Zen Buddhist. And it's a very interesting approach about how to kind of find the extraordinary in everyday things. Perfect. I thought that was a really great book. And then one other one that's really helped me is called Waiting. And it's a non-believer's guide to a higher power. And that one really helped me.
What's it called again?
Waiting, yeah. A non-believer's guide to a higher power. And that's by Mara Hornbacher.
What beautiful suggestions. I love it. Thank you. I've only heard of one of the books, so I love getting new suggestions.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm a book nerd. Totally.
Okay. And Cole, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Suggestion that I've ever received? Well, I really think that, I don't know if this is a suggestion or not, but the thing that I recalled from that lady who was at the treatment center, who told me that, you finally get to a point where you can be drunk and high, you can have that life, or you could be happy and you can have everything else. And I just think that that's a really good, and it's not, I don't know if that's a suggestion, but something to ponder.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And to weigh, put on the scales.
Well, with that being said, then what would be the if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would it be?
I think just to leave room for the unknown. Otherwise, your story has already written itself, and it's just going to get worse and darker. But if you leave room for, the unknown possibility, then it can just be better than you ever imagined. And I know that sounds cliche, but it is so true.
Cole, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, this has been wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
This is great.
Thank you.
I'm really happy to share.
Gosh. Now, do you have a web page? Do you have like classes that you're currently teaching? I mean, I don't know, because you just said you finished the training, right?
Yeah.
So give us your website and the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you.
Yeah. No, I've already been teaching yoga and doing all of that for a bit. I'm just now finishing Nikki Myers' training, the yoga and recovery piece. But you already know that part, obviously. ColeChanceYoga.com, and that has stuff about my yoga, my Thai massage, and it has a link to YouTube videos and kind of what I'm up to. I travel a lot, so I'm kind of do workshops wherever I am, wherever I'm traveling to. So I'll be in Colorado next over the winter. I'll be back in Vail.
All right, wonderful.
Looking forward to it.
I love it. Okay, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.